Well, we do know that hope faded today for many of the 162 people's families aboard Air Asia Flight 8501 after authorities confirmed the debris and bodies from the plane were indeed found. Some of the folks on the flight, which vanished Sunday en route to Indonesia from Singapore, were traveling to provide for their families. Some were embarking on holiday vacations with friends or relatives. Some weren't even supposed to be on that plane at all. Joining us in the studio is president and founder of NYCAviation.com, Phil Durner. Welcome back to Arise. Thanks so much for joining us to talk about this. With today's technology that's available, how is it that a plane can essentially just go missing?
Well, the aircraft in this case didn't so much go missing as it was difficult for them to get to the search area because of weather and the fact that this was over water. If this had happened on land, it would have been much easier to spot the aircraft sooner. And everyone's thinking about Malaysia 370, thinking that it's a very similar situation, when the only similarity is that it happened over water. It's very difficult to lose a plane, and we didn't exactly lose it just for a short period. We did get there eventually.
Yeah, with the debris coming up a lot more quickly, and also the ocean there a lot more shallow.
Yes.
But we do know that a lot of the technology that's still being used are those black boxes. Is there any way, though, to somehow track more in real time using some kind of cloud technology or anything?
There is, and a lot of people say, hey, when's this going to happen? But the technology is already there, and it's just that we're taking steps toward that. Malaysia 370 taught us many, many lessons, and this is something that we are going to see, and it's ultimately going to be up to the federal agencies to force the airlines to go through that. There's a big cost, and it's just a matter of picking the best technology to make sure that it's reliable and building some redundancy in that as well, because if something happens to that aircraft, we can't rely solely on the cloud either.
Right, we need more than one check. Well, we also know that there were pilots on the plane and that they sort of were in a not great weather situation, but were they partly to blame, or what could have been some of the issues that could have caused the plane to go down?
Well, it's still a little early, and we shouldn't speculate too much because we don't know what level the weather played in the crash or what role the pilots might have had either. We know that there was some very, very severe weather out there, and it is likely that the weather did play a part in that, and any number of things could have happened in the storm. The pilots may have had absolutely no role and nothing that they could have done, or maybe it was heavily pilot error. There's so many different variables still, even with what we already know, that it's just too early to speculate.
Well, we also know, though, that training varies for pilots country to country. Is it possible that these folks had insufficient training for what this mission entailed?
That's possible. The regulatory procedures and all the rules and laws that are in place all around the world vary, and some are going to be better than others. Here in the United States, the laws are very, very strong, and I think the safety record here in the United States shows that. So looking over at other parts of the world, I think more importantly, we can look at that and say, what lessons can we learn to make changes in the future so that those that have died don't die in vain, to make it that much safer in the future?
Well, we all want to make sure that we fly safely, and we take to the skies all the time because of holidays and whatnot. What is the comparison rate, if you will, to other forms of transportation when it comes to safety on flights?
I would rather get on an airplane than walk down the street. The most dangerous part of air travel is going to the airport. On average, in a year, there are about 25,000 fatalities automotive in the United States. For the airlines in the U.S., it's 1, 3. It's always a single digit if there are any crashes that year at all. So it's incredibly safe. In the last 10 years, there have been 5 billion people that have flown domestically in the U.S. and under 100 fatalities. So that's almost the population of the world. And imagine only 100 of them.
You mentioned earlier that some of the, things that they could, use to improve the flights and the planes themselves and the technology, that some of that is out there, but that it's also a cost issue. Are consumers, do you think, going to be willing to pony up a little bit more, or will the airlines absorb the cost of implementing those new strategies?
I think that passengers are going to not be too excited about the cost of airfare no matter what. Airfare is something that's very expensive, and passengers are very, very bothered by what they say, the nickel and diming and everything. It's a very difficult industry to make a lot of money, and the airlines have a ton of overhead, and they have to figure out how to spread all of that overhead among the tickets. So the passengers might see a couple bucks or something here from that, but it's very worth it. I think everyone cares about safety.
I think so too. Phil Durner, thanks so much for joining us for that.
Me.
We appreciate your insight.
Thank you.